There are two types of dukkha in Buddhism. One is called suffering. The other one is not suffering. But the problem is, people took the direct translation from that Pali word. That Pali word is dukkha. When it says dukkha, if you translate that into English, then it is suffering. If you don't take the meaning, if you take only the translation, then you will be misguided. Lord Buddha didn't say anything about dukkha. That means about suffering. Suffering is there. He didn't have to say that. Suffering is there. Everybody is suffering. The Lord Buddha once said, he came to this world to reveal the truth. And once he had achieved his Buddhahood, he said that I have seen the truth. I have revealed the truth which I haven't seen in my samsaric journey. In my samsara. I haven't seen it. I haven't revealed it. This is the first time I've seen the truth. The first truth he has seen is suffering. That means the first truth he has seen is the dukkha. But when you take the translation, it's suffering. But you all know that before the Buddha, everybody was suffering, and in the Buddha's time, everybody is suffering, and now everybody is suffering. In the future, everybody will be suffering. You can't stop that. Everybody feels, because it's a feeling. Mental and physical suffering. Lord Buddha didn't talk about that. But sometimes he talks about the dukkha, which is suffering. Just after the dukkha, he revealed the truth, the first truth of the Four Noble Truths. The first one, the truth of the noble truth of suffering. The noble truth of suffering is completely different to the physical and mental pain. If you take it as physical and mental pain, you will be misled. Then you will try to stop that. But mental suffering is created due to the first noble truth. Actually, if you don't understand the first noble truth, mental suffering occurs. You can't stop that. Therefore, we have to focus on the first noble truth, which is dukkha. That dukkha is not the mental suffering or physical suffering. Actually, it is called the false sensation of existence, otherwise, a false sensation of an entity. When the mind feels that it's an entity, that's the suffering. But when I say that, then you might think, how can it be suffering? That's the problem. You, the direct translation of that Pali word, you didn't consider the meaning. If you don't consider the meaning, if you take only the translation, then definitely you can't get the meaning. You can't use the word. As you all know that there's a village, there's a town called Kalutara in Sri Lanka. Then if you take the direct translation, you will say black rat. You can't take it. You can't use the word like that. Therefore, you need to understand the first noble truth first of all. The first noble truth is the noble truth of suffering. That means the false sensation of existence. The mind feels its existence. The mind feels that it's an entity, therefore the mind wants to maintain it. The mind wants to do anything what it can do to maintain it. If the mind doesn't see that, the mind has to maintain that entity. That's the first noble truth. You have to understand that. You can't feel it. You need to understand that. If you can understand the truth, if you can understand the dukkha, I'm going to use that word, dukkha. I can't use suffering because it doesn't have a meaning. When I use suffering for the first truth, which is dukkha, the normal truth of suffering, then it doesn't have any meaning. Therefore, I'm going to use the word dukkha. Then dukkha is the false sensation of an entity. You need to focus on that. To focus on that, this is a very deep question, I'm telling you. Therefore, I have to explain all these things before I come to that. If we lose time, if we finish the time finishes, then we will talk about it later. But I have to come from the beginning. Otherwise, this won't be an answer for that question. To understand the dukkha, you need to understand anicca. There's a word called anicca. That word should be understood. Otherwise, you can't understand anything. If someone can understand anicca, he will understand dukkha. If he understands dukkha, then he will understand nibbana. He will achieve nibbana. He will enter the path once you have understood the dukkha. Once you have felt the dukkha, do you think that you will attain nibbana by feeling it? No. You have to understand the dukkha. That means you have to understand the process. But the mind perceives that it's an entity, everything is an entity. That's how the mind perceives. That's how the mind feels, and that's how the mind perceives. Due to ignorance and attachment. That's the only problem it has. Due to ignorance and attachment, mind always perceives itself as an entity and everything as an entity. Therefore, mind can't understand anything by itself. You need the Buddha. You need the Buddha to understand this thing. You need the Buddha to guide you to understand the truth. Because your mind can't understand, because your mind is so ignorant. I'm not saying that you are uneducated. What I'm saying is you are so ignorant, your mind is so ignorant about the reality of the world. Therefore, the mind can't perceive perfectly. The mind can't perceive correctly. It perceives. That's its job. It perceives. Whatever it is, it perceives. Colors, sound, anything. It perceives. But the problem is, it can't perceive correctly. Because it doesn't have correct data. It is corrupted. The mind is corrupted, the mind is defiled. If the mind is defiled, the mind can't perceive things correctly. But it perceives, because that's it. Then you take decisions. You think that all the decisions you have taken is good, perfect, but it's not. Everything. Every decision you have taken it with an ignorant mind. There's a price to pay. You need to come back to the samsara again. because of the wrong decision you took. If the mind perceives that everything is an entity, the mind has to maintain them. It has to maintain them because that's not the truth. You all have heard this, I think. If you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything. Then if you know the truth, you don't have to maintain it. Because nature is true. Natural things are true. If you don't know about nature, if you don't know about, or if you don't know the reality, then you may have to work against nature. But we all know that nature is everything. Nature means, we call vipaka in Buddhism. Vipaka is everything. Vipaka creates the world. Vipaka creates the world. Vipaka destroys it. Or Vipaka destroys it. Vipaka is the creator. Vipaka is the destroyer. And the world is not fixed. Everything works according to the theory of cause and effect. That's the best thing the Lord Buddha found. That's the reality. That's the truth of nature. How nature works. What is the theory? We have many theories. Scientists have been looking for, and scientists have found many, and they try to explain the universe, they try to explain nature, but they haven't found the truth yet. But the Lord Buddha found it, and he gave us a theory. That's called the theory of everything. That's how I feel. Because it explains everything, ladies and gentlemen. Whatever you come up with will be explained by that theory. If you talk about the universe, if you talk about nature, if you talk about anything, if you talk about artificial things, if you talk about natural things, if you talk about anything, if you talk about space, if you talk about Mars, the sun, the moon, whatever it is, those things will be explained. If you know the theory of cause and effect, you can explain everything. Your voice, you can explain your voice. Sound, touch, everything. You all know that. You can hear and you can see. Sometimes you feel that it happens at the same time, but it has a small time difference. You see something, and just after that, you listen, you hear something. When you hear that, you can't see. Then what happened to the picture you have seen? The problem is you think that you have seen the picture which is outside, which is in the outside world. You used to believe that. Because the ignorant mind wanted you to believe that. We can't put a blame on anyone. That happens due to an ignorant mind. That's why you need to cleanse your mind. That's why you need to enlighten your mind. When the mind is enlightened, then mind will see the truth. To enlighten your mind, you need to use the anicca. That's one of the best things. One of the best teachings of the Buddha. You need to use anicca. You need to know about the anicca. Can be revealed only by the Buddha. No one can talk about that. I'm not talking about impermanence, ladies and gentlemen, which is anitya. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about anicca. Only the Buddha can reveal it. Only the Buddha can use it. If you have understood the Dhamma, you can use it. Otherwise, it will be only a word. You won't be able to know the truth. You won't be able to know the meaning if you use anicca. Everybody can talk about anicca, but they don't know the meaning. They can't feel the meaning. If you know the theory of everything, then you will see the anicca. To know the theory of everything, you should be able to listen to it first, understand it, and apply it into your life, your experience, and the world. If you can apply that, you will see the truth. When you see the truth, you will see the dukkha, which means this is only a false sensation. But if you don't see the truth, your ignorant mind perceives this one as an entity, like you feel right now. I'm talking to you, you are listening. That's how you feel. Bhante is talking to us and we are listening. I'm listening. I'm learning. I'm meditating. So on and so forth. That's how you feel. You means the mind perceives it wrongly. What can we do? At a time, a mind is created. But the problem is the mind thinks that mind is continuous. The mind is continuous. The problem is, I can't say that you think that the mind is continuous because you can't think, because you, who's you? Nothing is called you. This is only the mind. The mind is created all the time. With the help of the body. The mind is created. The mind is not continuous, ladies and gentlemen. The mind is discrete. The mind is discrete. It's like energy. Before we used to learn, in Newtonian physics, we used to learn that energy is continuous. But after that, we came to the quantum physics. When we used the quantum physics, we came to know that energy is also discrete. Everything is discrete in this world. You can't find anything continuous. Everything is discrete. Nothing is continuous in this world. So as the mind. The mind is also discrete. It's not continuous. But the ignorant mind always perceives itself as continuous. And it perceives other things also as continuous objects, fixed objects. Therefore, you will see, if you see the fan, if you see this curtain, whatever it is, then the mind perceives that it's one thing. It perceives everything as entities and fixed things, fixed objects. Your body, you all know that. You all are made of four basic elements. If you don't know about, if you are not familiar with four basic elements, you all know that you all are made of atoms. And atoms are separated. Between two atoms, there's a small space. Inside the atom, we all know that an atom is made of subatomic particles. In between subatomic particles, there's a space. And you all know that everything is vibrating. Then do you still believe that you are a fixed object? Your body is a fixed object? Do you still believe that? But the problem is, the mind wants to perceive that as an entity, as a continuous thing. This is what happened to the mind. If you have learned science, you all know that your body is made of electrons, protons, and neutrons, and they are individual particles. An electron can't be with a proton. A proton can't be with a neutron. They are individual particles. They are vibrating individually. We all know that because we have learned science. Modern science has taught us. We all believe that.
And it has proven. Even though it has proven, still the ignorant mind want to believe that everything is an entity. That's why even the scientists who have proven this, they also believe that everything is an entity. Otherwise, they should be able to see the truth. They haven't seen the truth. If they have seen the truth, then they should be able to eradicate all suffering, all sort of mental sufferings. Or finally, they have found something and they have proven something, and finally, they hang themselves. They commit suicide due to the excruciating pain, excruciating mental pain, unbearable, because they are suffering. That's the other suffering. That's the real suffering. Suffering means suffering. Suffering means mental or physical suffering. That's not the false sensation of existence. That's called jati. The Lord Buddha said. The Lord Buddha used a word called jati. That's jati. The other one is suffering. Therefore, if you want, you can use suffering for mental and physical suffering, mental and physical pain. But the false sensation of existence can't be suffering. Actually, when it happens, you don't feel a pain. Actually, you will feel a pleasure when it happens. In the future, we will discuss about that. When the jati is created, what happens to the mind? What the mind feels? We will talk about that later. Your main responsibility should be to enlighten the mind. Otherwise, the mind will perceive things wrongly, and the mind will take decisions. Finally, when the mind takes a decision, then it has to act accordingly. When it acts, it commits a sin or it earns a merit. That depends. But still, the mind is ignorant. If the mind is ignorant, mind is always expecting things. Mind expects things, ladies and gentlemen. The mind expects things. It has a hope because it wants things, because it doesn't know the truth, because it perceives everything as entities. Therefore, it has an expectation. An expectation is created in the mind. When the mind is formed, and the expectation is also created. Therefore, the mind has to expect things. That means the mind is vexed. When the mind is vexed, it has to do something to come out of vexation. That means it will have another expectation to come back. It is passing away, or it passes away with the pain. Pain means with the expectation. If you passed away with an expectation, what will happen? Then you will come back. I'm not talking about you, ladies and gentlemen. That happens to the mind. The mind rises, then it passes away. When it passes away with an expectation. Therefore, it has to come back. Therefore, the mind has to be created again. That's how you live. That's how the mind is created, with the help of this body. We can destroy this body if you want. You can destroy it completely, but you can't destroy the process of the mind. I'm not talking about Atma. I'm not talking about any fixed thing inside this body. No one is there. I can tell it for 100%. No one is there. The process of the mind is created. The process of the mind happens all the time. If we destroy this body, then the process of the mind happens, not in the body, not the help of this body. It will find another body. Another body means not it won't enter another body like a ghost. Naturally, a body is created for it. Then you might think that, are you talking about reincarnation? You might you might ask from me, are you talking about reincarnation? No, I'm not talking about reincarnation. If you use reincarnation means, first of all, someone should be there. Someone fixed should be there. Like if I take in Hinduism, you can take. I'm not insulting to any religion. What I'm saying is, in Hinduism, if you take Lord Vishnu, then Lord Vishnu is fixed. Then Lord Vishnu came to the world as Lord Rama, Lord Krishna. Then Lord Vishnu is constant. It is fixed. Then it came to the world as Lord Rama. After that, he went back. Then came to the world as Lord Krishna. And again, he went back. Therefore, in Buddhism, reincarnation is not accepted. Who is there to be born again? Tell me. Like perhaps you think that when I die, I will be born again. Perhaps you may think that when I die, I will go to hell. I will go to heaven. I'll be someone. That's how the ignorant mind. That's how the ignorant mind perceives. It perceives itself as an entity. Therefore, it wants to maintain it. Now the mind thinks that it's living. It has been living. The mind has a childhood. And right now, the mind is living. And in the future, he will live. And he will have a lifespan of 100 years. And finally, it will die. That's how it perceives. Nobody's there to die, ladies and gentlemen. When the mind rises up and passes away, and another mind should be created. But if the next mind is not created in the body, this body will fall over. This body will fall to the ground. That is called death. It's like a fan. It's like an engine. If you have seen an engine, if you have heard about an engine, that's how it works. It has cycles, essentially. Amount of fuel is used. Pistons are moving up and down and come to the rest position. When it comes to the rest position, one cycle is done. The wheel is rotated. A cycle. One is done. Again it happens. Two are done. Two cycles are done. Again it happens. This is how the engine works. One day it comes to the last. But engine is fixed into the bus, into the van, into the car. One day it comes to its last cycle. Last amount of fuel is used. Pistons will go up and go down and come to the rest position. That is the last. Engine is broken. It's not working. Do you believe that the car is dead? Have you seen a car man inside the car? Car Atma, car soul. Have you seen the soul of a car? Well, that happens. That has happened. Actually, same thing happens in the body. But the problem is, the ignorant mind perceives itself as an entity. That entity is you. That entity is you I would say you means the false sensation. That's why the mind perceives itself as a human being. Look at yourself. The mind perceives. You can't perceive anything. You all know that. To perceive, you need a mind. Let's assume that you are there. What can you do? Let's assume that you are there, but you don't have a mind and the body. Then tell me, what can you do? You can't do anything. To live, you need the mind and the body. You have the mind and the body. That's it. Mind perceives. The mind perceives everything. The mind perceives itself as an entity. That's the problem. Therefore, it believes that it's living. It has been living. And finally, it will come to its end. Then it feels that, oh, I'm going to die. Now the mental pain is created. The mind feels that I had to protect myself. Then the fear is created. The mind feels that it's an entity. Therefore, it has to be maintained. Therefore, work has to be done. The mind has to do something to protect itself. It's not natural. It is mind-made. Actually, ignorant mind-made. Therefore, the mind has to protect this. Now, look what's happened to you, ladies and gentlemen. Now you have to protect yourself. You think that this is you. You think that everything is an entity. Therefore, you have to maintain. You think that your body is an entity. Therefore, you have to maintain this body. You think that your mind is an entity. Therefore, you have to maintain the mind. You are restless. But you are looking for serenity. If the mind is ignorant, you won't be able to feel that. You won't be able to achieve it. First of all, you need to tame your mind. That's the only thing you have to do. You don't have to do anything to yourself. Even though you feel yourself, don't think about that. Leave that behind. Focus what exists. You may feel that you are an entity. Okay, leave it behind. Yes, I exist. Okay, leave it here. But focus on what actually you have, what actually exists. What actually exists in your body and your mind. Then start to treat your mind. When the mind is ignorant, the mind perceives all these things a wrong way. It always uses wrong way. Therefore, if you can use the mind, if you can use the mind, or if you can use the Dhamma, the Lord Buddha's doctrine, to tame, to cleanse your mind, then the mind will see the truth. Then you will see that death is also an illusion. Nobody is there to die. If nobody is there to die, who is there to be born again? That's why I told you, reincarnation, the theory of reincarnation is not accepted. Nobody is there to die. Nobody is there to be born. But you should understand that. That's the truth. You should understand. Then if you can understand the word anicca, the concept anicca, then you will see everything. Therefore, anicca is the best word. You just start your journey. If you don't have the meaning, you won't be able to see the truth. When the causes come together, an effect appears. An effect is created. It's an effect. It's not fixed. It's an effect. Everything is an effect in this world. Your body is an effect. Your mind is an effect. The color you have seen is an effect. The sound you have heard is an effect. Everything is an effect. due to causes, that effect appears. If causes are there, the effect appears. If the causes are not there, the effect disappears. I can't say it disappears. Actually, what happened is, I would plant this into your head in this way. When the causes are there, the process occurs. The process is created. The process starts. When the causes are not there, the process is ceased. As a result of that, you will see something appears and disappears. When I write 1 and 2, 12 appears. When I rub off 2, then you can't say that 12 disappears. 12 wasn't there. The process starts, and when I rub it off, the process stops. Therefore, 12 can't be seen. Apply that to everything. Then you will see the truth. Try to see the anicca in everything. You need to understand anicca. You don't have to understand every mechanism. Don't try to understand every mechanism. Sometimes you may want to apply anicca into this camera. But the problem is you don't know every part of the camera. Then you might stuck. You don't have to. You just need to apply the Dhamma just to understand the concept of anicca. Because your mind is so ignorant, because the mind doesn't know about anicca. The mind thinks that everything is fixed. Because the mind doesn't know the truth. Therefore, you have to teach it the truth. To teach it the truth means, when I say you have to teach the mind the truth, then you might think that then when I teach, do I exist? No, the mind has to teach. The mind has to teach. That means actually you should have an external force. That's the teacher. That means your mind should get a view from your teacher. Right now, you have many views. But everything is ignorant. Ignorant view can't create a noble mind. Try to understand this. An ignorant view can't create a noble mind. Therefore, you should have a noble view to create a noble mind. If a noble mind is created, the environment of the mind, which is called gati, can be cleansed. Attaining Nibbana is not purifying the mind. Attaining Nibbana is purifying the gati. Gati means the environment of the mind. I would say gati means, let's assume that there's a snake. It lies in a pond. It has to create the pond by releasing some chemicals, releasing a liquid, let's say, from his body. Then the snake releases the liquid and creates the pond, and the pond creates the pond protects the snake. The snake lies in the pond. No one can touch the pond. Only the snake. Snake can defile it. The snake can cleanse it, purify it. The pond always protects the snake. The pond is called gati. The snake is called chitta, the mind. Now I'm going to use gati, the word gati. Attaining Nibbana is purifying the gati. That means you have to cleanse the pond. If you have to purify the mind, you can do it instantly. When you understand the Dhamma, when you contemplate the Dhamma, then you will, or the mind is purified for an instant. But that's not the supreme bliss of Nibbana. You have to purify, you have to cleanse the gati, the pond, completely. But the problem is, no one can touch it, no one can enter, no one can use it. Only one can use it, that's the mind. Only one is there to defile it, only one is there to cleanse it. The mind. The mind means, again, the mind is not continuous and mind is not fixed. Mind is created, it is discrete. When the causes are there, the mind is created. This is how it works. That's why I told you, if you don't know anicca, then you won't be able to understand this. If you don't know anicca, you think that the mind is continuous and mind is fixed. That has been there. Therefore, you will try to purify the mind. But the problem is, you can't purify the mind because mind rises and passes away very quickly. You can't do that. You just need to let the mind is created with the Dhamma. Because the mind is always created with a view. If you have a wrong view, the mind is created with the wrong view, then it defiled the pond. It defiled the environment. It defiled the gati. It defiles. It defiles the gati. Then if you had to purify that, then you had to use a noble view. But the problem is, in your set of views, if you don't have any noble view, then you can't purify your pond. You can't purify your gati. That's why you need to associate a noble person. That's why you need a teacher. Once you have your teacher, listen to him. Let him preach to you. And you will listen to him and understand the Dhamma. If you get knowledge, when you listen to the Dhamma, when you listen to your teacher, you will get knowledge first. Then you need to practice it. When you practice that, it will convert to wisdom. First, you get knowledge. Then you can convert into wisdom. Don't ever think that when you listen to your teacher, you will get wisdom. You can't. When you listen to your teacher, actually teacher gives you a vibration. You all know that. From teacher's throat, a vibration emits. Then the mind is created with the sound. The sound is created in the mind and it perceives. The mind perceives it. Finally, 1,000,000 minds will be created. Then one word, one sentence is created, is formed. At that time, you will have a piece of information. That's only a piece of information. When you listen to someone, you always get a piece of information. Then you need to apply that to your life. Then it will convert to wisdom. Wisdom is within you, ladies and gentlemen. I can't pass the wisdom. I can pass the Dhamma. I can't give my wisdom because the wisdom is created in the mind. It is inbuilt. If you are familiar with Abhidhamma, it's in Chetasika, Prajna Chetasika. That is inbuilt. I can't offer it. But I can offer a piece of information. The truth of the world, the truth of nature. That's only a piece of information. If I talk about the theory of everything, the theory of cause and effect, that's an information. You have to work out. You have to contemplate. When you contemplate, it will convert to wisdom. Then a wisdom is created in your mind, then the mind can use the wisdom which is created in it. Then the mind can use that wisdom and perceive the world as it is. But now, the mind can't perceive the world as it is. The mind creates a world. The mind creates a world with full of suffering. That's what has happened. That's what has happened. The world is created. Then the mind believes that world exists. You believe that this classroom exists. Actually, the classroom exists, but the problem is all the colors, all the sound, all the smell, all the taste, whatever it is you have been feeling so far were created in your mind. But the innocent mind, the ignorant mind, it's hopeless. It is destitute. I'm telling you. If the mind is ignorant, that is the most destitute thing in the world. Because it can't do anything. Because it has to take its own decisions. Just imagine this. You are the only person, or you are the eldest in your family, and you had to take the decisions on behalf of your family, and you are so ignorant. What will happen to your family? If someone is there to help you, if someone is there to argue with you, then you can use his knowledge, his wisdom, that person's wisdom. And if you don't have anyone, then you had to take your own decision on behalf of family, on behalf of your family, then you will destroy it. That happens. That happened to your body. The mind has to take the decision. The mind had to take the decision. That's why you have seen obese people. I'm not insulting them. The only problem is they are obese due to their ignorant mind. Because the mind, I'm not talking about that person, ladies and gentlemen. Person doesn't exist. Then why should we talk about a person? Therefore, I don't blame people. I don't praise people. No point in doing that. Only the mind exists. It's also discrete. And it exists. And it's a process. That's why we can change things. That's why we can attain Nibbana. If the mind is fixed, we can't attain Nibbana. It is not fixed. We can change it. We can means the mind can change it if it takes a noble view. Now the mind has to suffer because of its ignorant decisions and because of its ignorance. It has to create a world. Actually, a world is created. It believes that the world exists. That's why when you see this background, your mind perceives this background exists here. All the colors exist here. That's how the ignorant mind always believes. That's how the ignorant mind always believes. The ignorant mind believes that it perceives the colors which is outside. Colors which exist outside. Therefore, the mind believes that the world exists and the mind lives. Actually, not the mind, because the mind, first of all, the mind believes that it's a human being. If I talk about your mind, it's a human being, and that human being lives in a world. The world is created in the mind. That the perception of a human being is created in the mind, but the mind doesn't know that. The mind believes that everything exists. It's a human being and the world exists. Therefore, It has to live in the world, but the problem is nature doesn't support. Nature does, because it's not natural, it's not the truth. Nature doesn't support to the idea of the mind. Therefore, the mind has to create it every time. That's why the mind can't take a rest. Because if the mind takes a rest, then the world collapses. Stop and see if you can. Try not to think. Try not to perceive anything. You all know that when you are tired, you are easily, or you easily fall asleep. When you are tired, you easily fall asleep. You can do that easily. But the mind should be very tired. But it never stops. It has to be there because it has to create the world. Only the Arahant can stop the mind if he has all sort of jhana. That is called, that's a big word, sanya vedita nirodhe. Only the Arahant can do that. Only the person who has achieved his salvation, which means who has seen the truth completely, can achieve it, can do that. Others can't, because when the mind stops, the world collapses. The mind can't tolerate that. But if the world exists, if the world exists, the mind should be able to do that. If the world exists, the mind should be able to do that. But the mind doesn't want to do that. The mind has a fear. The mind is too afraid to stop thinking. It wants to think. It's waiting for another stimulus. It's waiting. It's waiting restlessly because that's the only way it can create the world. It doesn't want the world to be collapsed. It wants to create the world. It wants to keep the world. The ignorant mind is the creator. The ignorant mind is the destroyer. Because the ignorant mind always creates vipaka. That vipaka gives the energy to another chitta to be born. When the mind creates vipaka, you have enough fuel to go, to exist, to stay in the infinite long journey ahead. Then if we go back to the question, if the mind perceives its existence, at the same time mental pain is created, and the mental pain is identified by the mind. Identified means because the mind feels its existence, and at the same time suffering is also created. Therefore, the mind believes that it is suffering. Then if the mind is created a person, if the mind is created a being, that suffering which is created belongs to the person. When the jati is created, all sorts of sufferings are also created. When the jati is created, the mind perceives itself as a being. Therefore, the suffering which is created at the same time is identified by the mind and start to believe that I am suffering. Suffering is created in the mind. Jati is also created in the mind. Both of them are created in the mind due to ignorance and attachment. If I go back, if the ignorance and attachment there, jati is created and the suffering is created. Due to ignorance and attachment, jati is created, suffering is created. Jati and suffering are two different things. Jati means the false sensation of existence, or a false sensation of an entity. At the same time, suffering is created. I would say mental suffering is created. Then the mind perceives this suffering as its own. Therefore, it believes that it's suffering. That's why you are saying, or you always say that, I'm suffering. I'm suffering. Suffering is created. You are not suffering. Suffering is created. The mind is created. The jati is created. Everything is created. Nothing has been there. Everything is created right now. The ignorance is created. The attachment is created. Vexation is created. The safety mechanism is activated. Then jati is created and suffering is created. Everything is a process. Nothing is fixed. You can seize the process. That's the second noble truth. You can seize the process of jati. You can seize. The process of jati must be seized because it's a process. It has a beginning. If you can eradicate that, the process will stop. If you can enlighten your mind, ignorance exists due to ignorance, which means ignorance exists due to lack of wisdom, I would say. Lack of wisdom. But if you can grab knowledge and convert it to wisdom, when the wisdom is created in your mind, ignorance will disappear. Now, ignorance is not there. Ignorance is not there now because it disappeared. Now, attachment won't be there. Why? Ignorance is the cause of attachment. Remember this. Attachment is also not continuous. It is also discrete. When the mind is created, everything is created at the same time. Try to see the process. Attachment is created due to ignorance. Vexation is created due to attachment. The safety mechanism of the mind, which is called abhisankara, is created due to vexation. Jati is created due to abhisankara. Suffering is created due to jati. Now try to seize this. This is a big process and it has its own components. Every component has a process. If you can enlighten your mind, ignorance will disappear. That's how you trigger the main process. Do that. To do it, you need to listen to your teacher and get knowledge about the reality, then convert it into wisdom by practicing, by applying the Dhamma. That's why we always ask you to apply the Dhamma. Apply it. Wisdom belongs to you. No one can steal from you. But information can be deleted when you have a head injury. But wisdom can't be deleted even though you die. Wisdom will stay with you forever until you will attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. That's called wisdom. The other thing is knowledge. Convert it, please. Practice, practice and convert every day. Now you listen to this sermon. You have been listening to this sermon and you got information. You got knowledge. Now, if you can remember at least one piece of information you got, you recite it, practice it. Practice, apply it to your life. Always determine to do that. Whatever the piece of information you get, convert it to wisdom. That's how you can preserve the Lord Buddha's Dhamma, Lord Buddha's teaching. That's the only way to preserve it. That's why by reading the Tripitaka, you can't attain Nibbana. You need to meet a noble person and you need to listen to the normal person you have met. Then you will get the real data. But it will also be a piece of information. Then you need to work it out. You need to practice. You need to apply. You need to use your experience. You need to apply the Dhamma to your experience and convert that into wisdom. Then you can preserve it. Therefore, now I think you all know that suffering is, actually mental suffering is optional. Because it's a process. Mental suffering is optional because it's a process. If it is a fixed thing, it's not optional. Actually, mental suffering and physical suffering, both of them are optional. If you want, you can stop physical suffering also. As you can stop physical suffering as well by using some sort of drugs, morphine. You can use them and you can stop the experience of physical pain because it's also a process. Everything is a process. If everything is a process, you can seize it. You can seize them at any time. You should be delighted by hearing this. You should be delighted by understanding this. If everything is fixed and if you are suffering, then you have to suffer forever. But if you have seen that everything is a process, everything has a beginning, and if you can eradicate the beginning, then you can eradicate the entire series of suffering, then you should be delighted. And if you have seen that, what are you waiting for? Practice every day. You have enough information. You have enough data because you have been listening to the Dhamma. You have been listening to your teachers day in and day out. You are so fortunate. You have many teachers. You always meet your teachers and you discuss the Dhamma with your teachers and you have enough information. Now you need to practice. I know you all are practicing, but I want you to practice even more. Preserve it, otherwise you will forget. Dhamma can be easily forget because it's a piece of information, I told you. But if you can convert that to wisdom, Nothing is there to forget. Wisdom is inbuilt. Does that make sense to you? Then I will answer your questions. Bring me all the questions you have, and I will answer them in the future. May the blessings of the Noble Triple Gem be with you all. Thank you.